We're meeting today at the Lord's New Church, and the pastor here is Tom Rose, and he had planned on being here to welcome everyone. However, he is in a lot of pain with his, I won't go into all the details, he's in a lot of pain and cannot make it today. And but he sends his welcome and his support for what we're doing with Deborah's tree and what we're doing today, looking at feminine spiritualities. So welcome. I'm sure he would have a lot more things to say besides that were he here, but that's all I can think of to say for him. I want to say thanks to Liz for this beautiful backdrop. Can you tell us about this backdrop?
Okay, so later on we're going to be breaking out into some breakout activities, and one of them is a theater sort of improv thing. So there may not be enough of us to do all kinds of different groups, but if one option would be, we can stand in front of this is a heavenly garden, and one thing that I think about feminine spirituality is that Swedenborg did not write enough memorable relations with women in them. Like, you often hear, like, his talks about, he's going to say things about, like, oh, a meeting of the wisdom contest or whatever, and it's all men in the afterlife. And I just thought we should have some improv of, like, what it would be to be a woman in the afterlife. And so I have a little game that you can decide to play this, or else you can decide. We have collage makings, you can make an art to express your spirituality. We have musical instruments. You can make a song to express your spirituality later. Or you could
Journal?
write. Yes, I have a book in there of poetry formats. There are boxes of fun staged around the campus right now. So this was trying to be like a garden in heaven where a person who is a newcomer might arrive. And so I have an improv game we can play, which is called Humans, Angels, and Imposters. And it's about either you can be an angel, or you can be a newly arrived kind of human, or maybe you are somebody who's a permanent resident of hell who has just snuck up to this garden to try to cause some mischief. And you'll be able to make a character and decide what your character would say, that kind of thing.
And where's the actual photo from? Or whatever.
Oh, that's all you were asking.
Oh, that's fine.
Closer to the mic, I think.
The actual photo is, I don't know, it's from Amazon.com.
Oh, okay.
You can buy these little things, they're called wall hangings or wall tapestries. And during the pandemic, I was on many Zooms because I take care of my dad, and that's why I still have a mask on, because he can't be exposed to germs anymore. So I had accumulated quite a lot of these because I wasn't allowed to go out at all.
It does look like somewhere on this very Lord's New Church.
Yeah.
It looks
It is not, but it fits right in, and I thought it looked very heavenly. And some of the flowers are actually real and hanging in front of it, so that's
I saw that.
yeah, that's
Wow.
a fun little thing. I'm sorry, Ross,
It's
continue.
beautiful. Thank you.
That root. Yes. And let's just start by saying your name and anything else you want us to know, because I don't think everybody knows everybody. We'll start with Amy, is that all right?
I'm Amy. I'm here out of curiosity.
Okay.
I don't, I guess, think necessarily so lately. I've not thought so much in terms of feminine, masculine spiritualities. I think of it just as spirituality.
Good, thank you.
I'm Rev Squared.
Rev
Squared?
Rev Squared. I'm a convention minister and a newspaper minister. I'm here to support you.
Okay. And you're Julie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Denise, and I'm here for various reasons, but mainly what Liz said about, that there really isn't that much on the feminine side of what Swedenborg, spoke of. And, I need to socialize more too, so the combination.
Excellent.
I'm Marette. I play music here every Sunday on that piano. So, I don't know, just this setting is just very familiar to me. I mean, that's part of why I signed up, but, you know, supporting my sister. Also, yeah, I'm curious about feminine spiritualities. I brought some music by Heather, new songs by Heather. Not meaning she sent them to us from heaven, but some less known ones. And so I'm just very, and my friend Lori Odner, like her music ministry. I just think women just have so much to offer our church, and I believe that they do, although there could probably be more attention to women's spiritualities, but yeah, that's why I'm here.
And Liz? Oh. Hi, I'm Liz.
Hi again. I'm Liz, and I'm here to make sure the tech is not, doing that. Okay. Hopefully that still works.
And Joy, can you say a few things about who you are, why you're here, whatever?
Good morning, all. And I'm Joy Barnett. I am in the Bay Area, where I am a chaplain at a local hospital, and I am working with 2 of the employees there to start a No One Dies Alone program, and have been delighted at the kind of reception. I've discovered I have a talent for making connections between my Swedenborgian upbringing. I was raised in the Glenview Church and General Church, and was a member at the Swedenborgian Church in San Francisco for many years. And I'm now what I would say is a pleasant member of 3 Protestant denominations, the Swedenborgian Church of North America, the United Church of Christ, and the Disciples of Christ. And active in the interfaith community in the Southern Bay Area, which has a wild diversity of faiths, cultures, sizes, shapes, and colors.
Yeah, thank you. Joy, did you say Barnett or Barnett, or what was your last name?
Nitz.
Nitz. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Feminine spiritualities. That's why we're here today. We're gonna
You go with.
first slide. Yep.
And,
Okay, yay, it's working.
So first of all, I just want to address some of the definitions and concepts in the title of our talk today about feminine spirituality. So according to a dictionary definition of feminine, it would be characteristics of or appropriate or unique to women. See, pretty basic. I'm going to need to get my glasses, sorry. This is the most like seventh grade.
I love this little Hindu picture. If you're not aware, that's henna. They often do designs in, I think it's Hindu culture, when people get married with henna on the skin.
yes.
So that's like a female bridal ritual right there.
So henna is the substance.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a dye that makes your skin brown where you paint patterns on it.
That's probably my vet calling and I'm just ignoring it.
Oh,
No, they'll leave a message, don't worry.
Okay.
Anyway, all right, and so Carl Jung, when he wrote about his theories about, I guess, internal processes, he came up with this term anima to describe the feminine aspect in men. So it would be the feminine aspect in all people. And anima comes from the Latin word meaning breath, soul, spirit, or vital force. So from a Jungian perspective anyway, those are some of the characteristics of being feminine: breath, soul, spirit, or vital force. In various theories about gender identity and self-concept, the theory basically is that feminine can apply to everyone. Everybody's got some feminine and some masculine. And so a little aside from that, feminism is advocacy for the rights of women, and it's based on the theory of the equality of the sexes. And as we spoke about a little bit earlier over coffee, sometimes that can be militant, and sometimes it can just be straight up advocacy. That's it. Spirituality. In 2012, I like this definition that Del Rio and White came up with. It's an attitude toward life, making sense of life, relating to others, and seeking unity with God, with the eventual goals of reaching truth and goodness, which reaching truth and goodness seems like a very Swedenborgian kind of concept, and they weren't necessarily Swedenborgian that I know of. And so this title of this topic with feminine spiritualities, like why did I choose plural instead of just spirituality? And the usage spiritualities I've noticed for about the last 5 years. It's something that may have been around longer than that, but I didn't notice it till 5 years ago. Anyway, in 2014, so more than 5 years ago, a book was published, Present Day Spiritualities. And Elizabeth Hens was one of the authors. And in that book, she talked about considering spirituality to be a vague and indistinct category, which I got to say, when you ask people, you know, how they would define spirituality, you get a lot of different answers. So I can see why she said that. But she said as far as spiritualities, she was studying the emergence of different forms of spirituality. So that basically is what I'm thinking of as spiritualities, different forms of spirituality, whatever that actually is. So there is a range of feminine spiritualities over time, with different practices and purposes and forms, going way back to ancient times. And there's a range of feminine spiritualities across different cultures and communities today, and those are influenced by cultural values and gender constructs in the different cultures. I think that there's a range of feminine spirituality because there's many ways to be a woman and many ways to experience spirituality. And I think that there's a range of spiritualities for trans women as well. There's not a lot of research on that. I kind of looked and there really isn't, but spiritualities for trans women and gender variant persons like non-binary people, because everyone is unique and every experience of spirituality is unique. Oh, I didn't mean to put this slide here, but since it's up, I'll talk about it. Distinctions aren't always distinct. I bring this up because I did do a little side comment about non-binary and trans women. So Swedenborg often writes in very black and white binary absolutes, like there's good people and evil people, there's men and women, there's will and understanding, there's a heavenly kingdom and a spiritual kingdom. But the distinctions that he makes aren't always absolutely distinct. I think it was probably easier to write that way. Maybe, I can't really say why he always wrote in such binary absolutes, but here's a number from Heaven and Hell. He's talking about the heavenly kingdom and the spiritual kingdom. So he says in the spiritual world there's two kingdoms, heavenly and spiritual. And there's such a difference between them that they don't live together or associate with each other. But they are granted communication only through intermediate angelic communities. And those communities are called heavenly spiritual. They're a little bit heavenly and a little bit spiritual. They're a blend. The result of this is that while heaven is divided into two kingdoms, they still make a single whole. So I kind of transpose gender onto that as well. Even though there's two groups of people called men and women, they can come together and communicate to make a single whole. So maybe feminine spiritualities and masculine spiritualities are not actually binary like that. there's a way to communicate, and they might together make a single human spirituality. And binary genders may not be absolutely binary either. There might be something in between, analogous to heavenly spiritual communities. And together, all of us make a single human family whole. So, Amy kind of said, really, are there really masculine spiritualities and feminine spiritualities? And sort of, certainly in the literature about spiritualities, people have made distinctions. So, just one slide on masculine spiritualities. Welcome, Sean. You came here to find out about it. And do you know everyone? Do you know Denise?
I'm sure.
Yep. So these are characteristics in general terms that characterize masculine spirituality. Seeing the divine as transcendent, and so like outside of self, away from self. And so if you think about worship spaces in Judeo-Christian congregations, you see that the altar or whatever, where the divine is far away from the people and up higher. So that's an expression of masculine spirituality. At least that's how I see it. From hierarchical, which leads to hierarchical ecclesiastical structures, like having a pope or a bishop. And the point of spirituality is to get to the mountaintop, and it's often sort of portrayed as getting to the mountaintop alone and having your experience with the divine. Independence, so maybe more of a focus on personal regeneration rather than communal or societal or helping each other with regeneration. And also with independence comes it's the opposite of submitting. It's difficult. Oh my gosh. Having a hard time with this one. Submitting is not part of independence. Okay, risk-taking can lead to disregard for safety, assertiveness, which could become dominance, action orientation, it's about doing rather than being. Self-discipline is important in masculine spiritualities, and that leads to ascetic spiritual practices like being the hermit that goes away. And it rejects sensual experiences, or a way of experiencing sensuality. That's spirituality. Protectiveness, self-confidence, objectivity, which dismisses personal experience, logic and analysis, which can dismiss intuitiveness. Definitely warrior is part of masculine spiritualities, and so that can lead away from compromise and peace. Self-survival, which is a focus on self, not so much on relationships and community. And boundaries, which can lead to hiding in a reality, like what's inside me is not on view. So, by contrast, a bit of an overview of feminine spiritualities. And I do say by contrast, but also realizing that there is overlap and there's human spirituality, but if we're just focusing on feminine spiritualities. Looking first at the ancient goddesses, they embodied a range of qualities that have implications for our understanding of feminine spirituality. So in the Greek goddesses, there was Hestia. She's a virgin goddess of hearth, home, and hospitality. So the virgin part is notable, as well as hearth, home, and hospitality. In Egypt, we have Sekhmet. She was a warrior goddess. She's not the one depicted necessarily in the little illustration I have there, but she's depicted as a fierce hunting lioness. The lioness was the most fierce hunter of all the animals in Egypt, and she would have a cobra crown. Venus, I'm sorry, Roman goddess of love, sex, beauty, and fertility. Frigg, I just love that name. What the frig? She's a Norse goddess of foresight and motherhood, and she was able to make things happen, which sounds like a mother, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, okay. The Native American white buffalo calf woman from the Lakota Nation, she was the goddess of peace the mother of life and the bringer of sacred rituals. Mazu, a Chinese goddess of integrity, benevolence, and love. And Eris was the Greek trickster goddess of chaos, strife, and discord. So there's obviously a range of qualities that were implied in feminine spiritualities that these goddesses were assigned. I mean, humans made them up. That's my opinion. Maybe they're real. But, I mean, humans took their understanding of what feminine is and placed them in these goddesses. And so we can learn some things. Now, this is a Deborah's Tree event, so I thought we would also take a little look at female prophets, because they demonstrate attributes of feminine spirituality as well. All of the biblical female prophets, I'm thinking of like Miriam the prophetess and Anna, Miriam in the Old Testament and Anna in the New Testament, they were given the responsibility to bring the words of the divine to their people. So that's part of feminine spirituality in the Bible. And they both, and including Deborah, demonstrated leadership, and they included male and female voices. Well, not so much Anna, but definitely Miriam and Deborah. That sort of inclusiveness. So Deborah was a judge and a prophet in Israel, and her story is in Judges chapters 4 and 5. And I have a few quotes there from the story as it's written in Judges, that she was a judge over Israel. The people came to her to settle their arguments, and she would sit under a palm tree and judge and be the spiritual leader. And she was the voice of the divine to the Israelite people, and she spoke of future events just the same as the male prophets did. She was called the mother to Israel, and she literally woke up the army's general and stirred up the people to take on an intruder who'd been bothering them for a long time. And so she commanded the army in a very successful battle and brought peace in the land for 40 years, which is a pretty impressive thing to do back in the day. Yep.
Was there a male prophet at the same time, like Jeremiah?
No, she was it. She was the prophet. There was no other prophet.
She had a male ally in fighting.
Right.
In
So-
who?
In fighting. So she woke up the armies. She got the general, Barak, I think his name was,
Yeah.
and said, we got to go and like take on this enemy and fight them. And he said, I'll do it, but you have to come with me because you're the prophet and we won't be successful. And she, you know,
So she
said,
went into
sure, she
battle.
went along.
Yeah.
She went to the battle. She led the troops because she was the representative of the divine for the people at the time. And they won. So just looking at that, the attributes of spirit that Deborah embodied were being still and listening, which is what she did when she was sitting under a palm tree listening. Openness to the divine, truth-telling, which I think of as saying what the divine, truthfully, reporting what the divine said, like we got to fight, and also whatever the divine message was for people whose problems she was solving. Leadership and inspiring people, self-confidence in standing up and protecting, and peace, bringing peace magnificently. Sonia Werner did that painting of Deborah. Just a little shout out for Sonia. Okay. So, female Christian mystics, the nuns from back in the day, also offer us some insight into feminine spiritualities. So Hildegard of Bingen, 12th century in Germany, she was a writer, composer, mystic, visionary, and medical writer and practitioner. She did a lot of things. And her big message was she saw all things in the light of God through the 5 senses. So her spirituality was very grounded in her senses, and everything she could see, touch, feel, whatever, she felt was a way of understanding or feeling God's presence. A century later, in the 13th century in France, Marguerite Porete, she wrote a book called The Mirror of the Simple Souls, and she wrote about the union of simple souls with the divine will, which was not in line with the Catholic teaching at the time, which was you could only reach the divine through the priest and the Pope. and she was talking about an individual imminent relationship with an imminent divine, and so she was burned at the stake for heresy for that belief. But that belief is very central to a lot of feminine spiritualities. And then in the 14th century in England, Julian of Norwich, she was a spiritual counselor, a visionary, a theologian, and a famous writer, and she trusted the divine's goodness despite doubt and fear. There was a lot of plague and other things going on, and despite all that, she trusted in the divine's goodness and wrote about it. And of course, these three female Christian mystics as nuns were helping the poor and the sick, because that would always be part of their mission. So what I take from that is that the feminine spiritualities that they embodied involved benevolence, being still and listening in relationship, that's similar to Deborah, openness to visions, sensuality, willingness to speak their truth and experiences, also trust, deep theological thinking and teaching and writing, a holistic approach, and self-sacrifice. I'm taking self-sacrifice from being burned at the stake. I guess you wouldn't necessarily want to sacrifice yourself that way, but anyway. So I'm just going through these lists, if any of those things like triggers anything in you, or that you identify with, feel free to share, but also later on when we do our creative get-together, have fun, that might be something that you could explore if any of these are really speaking to you. So, now jumping ahead to more recent times, I'm just going to look at what some authors have written or done that can help us understand feminine spiritualities perhaps more in our time. Though, feminine spirituality and spiritualities were women over all these centuries, so, maybe it doesn't really change that much. Okay, back in 1895, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she edited the Woman's Bible. With her purpose was to liberate women from the theological arguments about women being subservient to men. I haven't looked at this Bible, so I don't know how she did it, but I think going back to the original languages, she maybe chose words, meanings that were not in line with the current thinking of that time. But I'm just guessing there. And then, almost a century later, Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza, who was a professor at the Harvard Divinity School in 1978, she wrote that feminist spirituality proclaims wholeness, healing, love, and spiritual power, not as hierarchical as power over, but as power for or as enabling power. So she was kind of making a distinction between the sort of hierarchical nature of male-inspired spirituality and saying that feminist spirituality, which is a version of spiritualities, right, is power for, or it's enabling power. And in 1988, Renita Weems, and I think she was also at Harvard, but I might be wrong on that, she wrote a book, Just a Sister Away, a womanist vision of women's relationship in the Bible. And she was making the case that feminine spirituality ignores the influence of race, oppression, and classism on the spirituality of black women. So you might say the womanist spirituality, besides the more traditional values of feminine spiritualities, focuses on race, oppression, and classism and how that affects the spirituality of black women, in addition to the enabling power and so on. Not long after that, in 1993, Carol Gilligan wrote a sort of classic book, In a Different Voice. This was as a response to Piaget's book that had come out not too long before that about moral development, in which he basically just used male subjects to define how humans developed morally. And so she specifically was focusing on development of women's morality, and she identified an ethic of care and non-violence as the basis of women's moral development, which was different than what Piaget was saying.
Another question?
Yeah.
Did she write a book similar to Piaget saying the stages for women, or because you compared it, I sort
Yeah,
of
she was
thought.
responding to it, but it's not staged
Oh,
in my recollection of reading the book.
okay.
She's just, yeah, describing, and she did some research when she was reporting that the women in their moral development over time, caring and nonviolence were values that came out.
Rose?
Yes.
I remember way back when observing that a lot of things were tested on men but not women.
Yes.
And that was eons ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of medical testing and so
Yeah.
forth. They would give men female hormones, and then see. Is that
It's
it?
like, duh.
Mm.
I
We're going, what?
Right.
Mm.
Safe and effective.
Right, and then 1999, Joan Borisenko wrote A Woman's Journey to God, Finding the Spiritual Path. Because as I mentioned before, oftentimes the spiritual path was framed more in masculine spiritualities, about a personal path, fighting demons and getting to the mountaintop. But she was looking at a spiritual path for women, which might be different, and so she described the sort of the spiritual path spirituality as natural, earthy, relational, mystical, embodied, intuitive, sensuous, and compassionate. And that women are relying on personal experience versus abstract theology, and also sharing our stories. So obviously some of this is repetitive. Guess what? The same kind of things come up from way back when to now, 1991. Rosemary Radford Ruth was also a very big leader in this field, and in 2005 her book Goddesses and the Divine Feminine, she noted that hierarchy is not essential in the Christian tradition, because usually it is. It's God and then Jesus and then the Holy Spirit and then the Pope and then, you know, it sort of trickles down.
Yeah.
She goes, it doesn't have to be that way. The God or Goddess is not merely mother and father, but is present in all roles and all experiences. Not in some kind of hierarchy, trickle-down way. In 2009, there was the Parliament of World Religions. Just a little aside, there was the second Parliament of World Religions, and the first one at the end of the 19th century was organized by Swedenborgian. So the Swedenborgians brought that sort of interfaith, let's all get together and honor each other's religion kind of thing to the world.
What year was that?
It was in the 1890s, the first one.
1890.
I believe that's correct. Yeah, and then 2009 was the second one. I wonder if the first one was in 1909. I forget.
Which Swedenborgian organized that?
From the Glenview area, and he was an architect, and his name started with B.
Burnham.
Yeah, Burnham. There we go. Anybody here related to Burnham? Okay. Sorry, it's just a really like a little Swedenborgian New Church thing. Who's related? All right, 2009, at the World Parliament of World Religions, a group was formed called Spirit and Faith, Women of Spirit and Faith. And one observation that this group made is that much having to do with the feminine is devalued and silenced in the dominant culture. So they promote alignment with feminine principle and recommend always being open to guidance from the Spirit, and to honor women's spiritual nature by using silence, reflection, divine guidance, and prayer in spiritual practices. In 2014, just taking a look at our Akasase sisters in the Muslim tradition, she wrote, Aisha Hidayatullah wrote Feminist Edges of the Quran. She asserts that gender equality and justice are the foundation of Islamic morality, which is maybe not what you would think from some of what we hear about that, right? But in her reading of the Quran, that equality and justice are the basis, and she revealed of the assumptions of the text of the Quran to be in favor of feminist and LGBTQ plus values, of basically inclusion and lifting up those that are not well represented.
I agree with her because I have the Quran, and having gone through it, there's nothing to support the people who have downgraded women in the Muslim tradition.
I don't know if you could hear that, Joy, but Julie was saying, having looked at the Quran herself, she couldn't really find support for the idea of putting down women, such as in the Taliban. I added the Taliban to what Julie said.
Many of them, several of the Muslim women that I speak with regularly.
I'm sorry, they say the same thing, that
Yes, they do, and that you embody that in how they are in the world, which the three of them are quite different in how they represent it. They are all, I should say, they are all Sunnis from India or Pakistan.
so culture, makes a difference to how you interpret your texts and how your feminine spiritualities emerge. 2016, Carol Christ, thank you, Joy, for that. Carol Christ and Judith Plasko, who each were leaders in the field of feminine spiritualities, they collaborated to write Goddess and God in the World, in which they reject the traditional views of divine transcendence and omnipotence, and instead they found divinity in the world, in finite embodied life, which a lot of feminine spiritualities, as we have seen, do. Yeah, did you have
No, just the omnipotence, rejecting omnipotence. I mean, I guess I was thinking omnipresence. But
Yeah, I guess the
omnipotence, what does that
omnipotence
mean?
being the divine is transcendent, is out there, way above us, has all power, and there's no power down here on earth, like the divine strong arm. And they're saying, no, there's strength and power in our relationships, in our embodiedness in the world.
Okay.
So just sort of looking back at what we've seen in feminine spiritualities thus far, just picking out a few themes. First of all, just thinking about the ancient sources of the goddesses and the prophetesses and the mystics. Those ancient sources do show a range of feminine spiritualities. And I was surprised to just notice that often strength of various kinds showed up in their spiritualities for all three. Yeah, I'll just say, this sort of surprised me. But anyway, so these are the expected sort of feminine attributes, the ones that I was like, oh yeah, of course, that would be feminine, and as I went through looking at the goddesses and all of them. Hearth, home, hospitality, sex, sensuality, beauty, fertility, motherhood, self-sacrifice, peace, sacred rituals, integrity, benevolence, the inclusion of male and female voices, being still, listening in relationships, openness to the divine, openness to visions, foresight, trust, and holistic approach. That's a lot of things that I think a lot of women or people who identify as female in some way would identify with at least one or two of those. And then the strength attributes that I noticed was being a warrior, chaos, strife, discord, able to make things happen, bringing the divine words, leadership, inspiring people, self-confidence in standing up and protecting, truth-telling, and thinking and teaching and writing about deep theological topics. And I'd say that last one requires strength because in most traditions it's the men that do that, and so for a woman to do that requires some strength and self-confidence to voice that. Some more themes from the definitions of feminine: breath, soul, spirit, or vital force. Then there was the grouping of wholeness, healing, love, caring, and nurturing. And then in the sort of non-hierarchical but more like partnership kind of focus on feminine spiritualities, enabling spiritual power from partnership, which is, I think, addressing what you were asking, Mara, like
About the
omnipotence. That spiritual power comes from partnership of humans, or that we feel it through that, maybe. Some feminine spiritualities include reversing racial discrimination, oppression, and classism. Care and non-violence are important in some feminine spiritualities. And then that whole the last two brackets together, natural, earthy, relational, mystical, embodied, intuitive, sensuous, compassionate, relying on personal experience, and sharing our stories. Those are all sort of themes that came up in the different ways that you can look at feminine spiritualities. And the themes go on. The devalued and silence is not just about that women are devalued and silenced and become second-class citizens, but also that list of compassion, earthiness, intuitive listening to each other and so forth, those kind of values often are devalued, I guess, in cultures. And the spirituality, masculine spirituality, is valued. So strength, independence, and so forth is valued and not. And of course, I think that is changing, but just in very broad terms. And like Marit said, you know, in our faith communities here, even in the Swedenborgian and New Church varieties of faith communities, often women's voices are not heard, or not heard as much. And it's changing. So, some more themes. Open to guidance from spirit and experiencing an immanent divine relationship, which is relationship with the divine within rather than the divine's out there and you're trying to get to the divine. Instead, you look inward and you find the divine presence within. Silence, reflection, divine guidance, and prayer. And I say, you know, that's a theme in our looking at feminine spiritualities, but definitely monks, like male religious people, have used silence, reflection, divine guidance, and prayer. So I'm not claiming it as it's only in feminine spiritualities, but they are valued in feminine spiritualities as well. Gender equality, justice, and inclusion came up. Seeing divinity in the world and in finite embodied life. Union, reproduction, yeah, definitely spiritual values, especially with those different kind of goddesses. Choosing our own spiritual destinies is, well, that comes up later as well, but yeah, that we're not necessarily tied to anybody else's spiritual destiny. And creativity, dancing, and movement. Actually, I don't really think that came up explicitly in anything that I've said thus far, but very often that is associated with women. And I'm thinking about like the Gathering Leaves retreats that we've had for Swedenborgian and New Church women around the world, and the sacred circle dancing has always been very popular. Movement of various kinds. Yeah. So now that it's 10 o'clock, and I raced through that, I'm sorry if it was a lot of information in a short period of time. So as Liz was describing before, we can now break into as many groups as we want to respond to all of this information about feminine spirituality. So in the kitchen we have art supplies. As Liz was saying, you can do a collage or whatever kind of creation you can come up with.
We have paint, we have collage materials, we have poster board, we have watercolor and acrylics, we have paint brushes.
So it's painting, it's markers, it's
We
collage.
have lots of little cutouts in different shapes because my dad bought me a Cricut.
So she went crazy cutting stuff out with a Cricut.
It's a thing that instead of printing, it cuts out shapes. It makes amazing, like if you see these little butterflies on this cups.
Yes.
Yeah, on the flowers, it makes shapes that look like that.
Out of paper?
Out of paper.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And in fact, that is why I chose those little things. Yeah, so in the kitchen we have all the Cricut stuff. This is the theater. I think I realize we've taped down this stuff, so we're just gonna have to be in front of it and pretend like this doesn't exist. But if you want to we can do some theater here. I have a bunch of costumes for angels and imposters hanging on the rack. over there, and I have also some interesting kind of like occupational ones for if you're a human who was a police officer or a dancer, or if you want to make a character who has recently arrived to the afterlife, you could. And I think what we would do is just put people up in different combinations and see what kind of improv would happen. In the round room, and if we decide we're not gonna do all of these kind of at once, I think I originally had the idea that we would split into groups and people would simultaneously be doing different things. So we put the musical instruments in the round room. But if people wanted to take more of a station approach, and we all try all the things while Roz is away,
That makes sense.
then we could drag the box of fun into here and use the good piano. There's a story behind why my keyboard has issues, but I won't get into it. Yeah, well, basically I had a keyboard, and last night I realized, an electric one, and last night I realized it was broken.
Oh.
And I had to get a new one.
Great piano here.
Yeah, we have a great
Well, the
piano.
best
I just went out and got a used one.
Yeah, I did find a used one for $35 at a thrift shop,
Oh.
like with 15 minutes to go, but it really made my day
But let's use
kind of stressful. But if we're not going to run the theater and the piano at once, we could technically, like, that's why we were going to do it in the round room. And I do have a bunch of drums, a bunch of rattles, a bunch of shakers. We could make some like tribalism kind of music.
Yeah, okay. Can I talk about what I brought too? for
Yeah.
music? And I do like your idea, maybe as a group we try a few of these
We
things,
try
but
a few of these different things.
I did tell you I brought two little-known Heather Childs' songs that would be fun to
try.
one of them we could listen to. I brought a dinosaur, meaning a boombox.
That's awesome.
Just because there's also I brought Jonathan Rose's CD, and there's two songs there that I brought music for, for singing along to or beating drums to or whatever. They're just fantastic songs.
Oh, yeah.
And a recording from Laurel of singing this Heather Child song that almost nobody knows, but it is a song taken a quote where God, the Lord, is being compared to a mother hen. Just think about that, taking people under her wing, and that's God doing that. Just the feminine spirituality thing. I brought that stuff.
Okay.
Sorry, sorry to be talking so much, but I brought, just in that previous list about spirit and with a feminine thing of rather than going for the mountain, but just going within and feeling the divine in you. There's a song that Brahm wrote that he brought to church here, and it's just very beautiful. We could sing along with that. It's about going inwards and finding the Lord inside, not on the mountaintop. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I had.
Lovely, thank you, Christine.
I have some.
I'm going to jump off and try to get back for the session at the end.
Okay.
And I'll engage in my own journaling or something of that sort.
Okay,
Thank you much. And that was a lovely overview of spirituality, feminine spirituality and feminine theology, feminist type theology in a way that I have not heard frequently. So thanks to Roz for doing that.
Yay.
Yeah, if you write a poem or something. Oh, she's gone. Okay. Yeah, so what I was thinking was we can do some of these fun things, and then Roz is going to be away. So when it's time for show and tell, we're going to be showing and telling Roz.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah.
So hopefully, we also have a box of, there's actually a book in there with all the poetry formats, so if you can't remember how to write a sonnet, but you feel inspired to write one, we have a rhyming dictionary and a thesaurus and a book that tells you how to do that.
You're amazing.
She's amazing.
You're amazing, bringing all that stuff. Wow.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, I think
We
that's...
should decide, yeah. Okay,
And
we should
so
go.
I'm gonna go, and so we scheduled lunch
at some point.
Yeah, or do you have to bring lunch or is it? already
No,
here?
the wraps and the salad are in the fridge. The
Okay.
soup is heating up, and
I'll just,
if you guys
Yeah.
start lunch without me, that's perfect. I don't know when I'm going to be back. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll definitely be back in time to do the second half, and I'll give a report.
What
on
time
my-
is the second half?
I think we have creativity groups, then lunch, then show and tell I think is at 1.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be at 1, when hopefully Rob will be back for it.
Okay.
And
Then we
then,
said show and tell at 1:30, and then the talking.
Oh, okay.
And this talking starting at 2:30.
yeah,
That's when Joy will be
Joy
back.
will
It's
come back to
2:30.
rejoin us at
We have to
2:30.
be sort of timely for her sake.
yes, so that will be great. And then after, your last presentation, we will have some discussion time. We did that at the end of, our other retreat, and people really liked it. People got to come up here and give their points of view at a microphone, which, come on, everybody loves that, so. So we'll do that at the end, and then we'll say, yay, we had a fun day. Okay?
Lovely.
All right.
And
Okay.
you could probably turn the Zoom off, the recording off. You keep the Zoom open.
I think we can leave the recording. Let's just leave it on because I don't know what happened. Do you know what happens if you turn it off and turn it back on again? Does it give you two blips?
Yeah, 2 blips.
Oh, okay. All right. In that case, we can turn it off.